You and we know the future of Xbox.
The future?
The future is here. This comes from The Verge reporting that a multi-platform announcement is what will be announced at the Xbox live stream on Thursday. We did have the official Xbox account on X on Twitter saying that they're going to be doing an Xbox live stream podcast thing at 8 p.m. UK time on Thursday on the 15th of February. But the announcement that's going to be coming out of that is a multi-platform future for Xbox. The Verge's Tom Warren reports that Xbox will be launching Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment on PlayStation 5 and Switch, which is corroborated by earlier leaks that showed PlayStation and Nintendo t-shirts in the game. They were already data mined. That post has now been deleted. It was initially over on Reddit. And apparently Sea of Thieves will also follow later in 2024. And then The Verge, and I quote, says, other first-party titles are also under consideration. This is the part of it that isn't in the newest report, but the general conversation as of last week was the wider scope of exclusives would include Starfield, Halo Infinite, the Master Chief Collection, Gears of War, and even the newly announced Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
That circle's great.
It's the ever-expanding circle at this point.
It's a reference to the circle on the DualSense.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was there the entire time.
They planned it. If it was on Phil Spencer's shelf, he always knew it was going to be happening. So we have this. There's a lot more here as well in regards to what's happening with the future of Xbox consoles. But thoughts on this being the future?
The future is crazy. I mean, we've spoken about it.
We need the money.
Yeah, we've spoken about it before on the podcast and in news videos and stuff. And it is kind of really interesting in the sense that I don't think many people saw this coming, even though the evidence has kind of been telegraphed for a long time now that Xbox is signaling away and basically being like, yeah, this thing that we're doing right now or have been doing for the last 10 years, it's not particularly sustainable. And now that they've got this big library that they can actually divvy out, it makes sense to them. How it will pan out in terms of future Xbox consoles and the desirability factor, given that, you know, one of the big pulls of them getting Activision Blizzard was like, hey, we're going to have Call of Duty in like 5 years. And also we're going to have, you know, Indiana Jones. We just got that exclusive. So it's, I'm excited and curious. I think it's an interesting time. I love the chaos of it all.
There's a lot of fun chaos. I think just if you're on the, you know, you're just watching this stuff unfold, just have fun with it. Just see how it all rolls out.
I'm like a dog chasing cars.
I always just treat all this stuff as just sports teams vying for your attention. They're all different ways to try and get your attention. Is it a streaming service? Is it exclusives? Is it some weird theme park, you know, in Nintendo's case, or whatever? But in regards to Xbox consoles and the future of that stuff, obviously there's been a lot of debate over whether Xbox were leaving the console race altogether since all this stuff initially started leaking last week. And then we heard that internally, head of Microsoft Gaming Phil Spencer was reportedly telling staff that Xbox wouldn't stop making consoles. And we now know from Xbox era's Nick Baker that the next Xbox will be headed up by the Microsoft Surface team and not the same team that built the Series X and S. Now, it's also worth throwing in that in September 23's Xbox leak, that was during the FTC trial, a whole bunch of documents came out. The documents were actually from 2022, so last year in September, you had Spencer and the team say, we're not necessarily committing to this, because it was from a year prior. But still, we got to see a discless Xbox, similar in look to the Series X, that they said would be adorably all digital. What leaked was a series of what looked like PowerPoint slides, essentially.
Just want to pull its cheeks.
It's just, don't you just want to own everything digitally? Alongside a mobile device and a potentially portable unit as well. Multiple leaks since then suggested a portable Xbox is in production alongside Sony attempting another handheld as well. Which the Surface team being in charge of the whole thing does make sense if you're Microsoft trying to bring it all together under the Microsoft banner, let's say. I'll also throw in that idea of Microsoft taking over overall in regards to branding and the naming of everything is that idea of Microsoft Game Pass. A few users across the last week noticed that various games didn't have the Xbox Game Pass name next to them on the Xbox storefront anymore. And the assumption is that a Microsoft Game Pass is the future. That could still be the case. We're still waiting on clarification for that on Thursday. But, it's worth just saying that this, in regards to Phil Spencer, his job title has been head of Microsoft Gaming for quite some time. He hasn't been head of Xbox for a little while. So we'll see on Thursday in regards to that. There's a little bit more, but thoughts on this stuff?
Oh, it's so much, Scott.
So much stuff, mate.
I think the moving away from Xbox as a brand, it doesn't make that much sense to me.
No.
Like, in terms of, we've had 20 years of this hardware, that's got big brand recognition, even if it isn't punching on the same levels as PlayStation. Mm-hmm. It's not like people in the 70s and 80s are going, you're going to play your Xbox. They're saying, oh, you're going to play on your Nintendo or your PlayStation.
They're still playing the Wii.
So it's, that in itself is a little bit weird because I feel like people aren't going to have, I guess maybe the speculation there is that they've looked at that and gone, well, maybe people on PlayStation and Nintendo will look at the Xbox branding and go, I don't want to play Xbox. Microsoft is clearly less offensive or less intrusive, but I would keep the Xbox branding. It's strong, you know?
Well, can you have an Xbox branding without a box is the thing? Because like it's worth doing a little quick recap there, because I did cover a few documents there where you have documents from 2022 showing, like I said, a Series X adjacent system that would be the adorably all digital thing at some point in the future. That's the thing that Phil Spencer and the team in September last year said might not necessarily be the case. However, more recently, you have Spencer behind the scenes as of last week, telling people in Microsoft that they're still making Xbox consoles going forward. So assumedly it is that box. But still, alongside that, you had the idea of an Xbox portable, and then you now have the thing from Nick Baker saying that whatever the next Xbox system is, the Surface team have taken over it. I just wonder whether the Surface team are doing the portable Xbox, and you still have a regular Xbox going forward as well. It's just not being headed up by the Series X designer.
It just has to be called the Xbox something, though, right? It can't.
Well, you
just
think
be,
so?
like,
Yeah.
The Microsoft style, it's not going to be like as compelling for people. And as someone who went through like 3 Surfaces during my university days, that gives me like Vietnam like war flashbacks. Because I mean, I don't know if people in the comments, if you own a Surface, have they gotten better? But I remember back in the days when it was the Windows 8 OS, it was very, very temperamental. Those things
They had a good reputation.
were not durable at all. So I mean, hopefully they don't go back to the days of the Xbox 360 where we were all RRODing everywhere. So, yeah, I don't know. It's really weird. I don't get it.
No, you said about being like that idea of like Microsoft branding is not as compelling as Xbox. Microsoft aren't compelling. No. Like they are just
You just think of Bill Gates on the stage doing a little dance.
Maybe he'll do a little, that's about as flair as they get, is him doing a little boogie. Like for the most part, they're in the background, they're helping you out. Like obviously Windows is huge. Microsoft reported had record revenue last year. They're one of the biggest companies in the world. And maybe they just don't care about the idea of Xbox being a bit cooler or a bit more trendy or whatever it is. They're a software company, and if they can get an archive of games that now include Call of Duty and everything else on as many platforms as possible, and watch the bottom line go up, that's maybe all they care about. Like I remember Josh saying when we did the podcast the other week, which please subscribe to the What Culture Gaming podcast, that by doing a deal as big as the almost $70 billion deal of acquiring Activision Blizzard, that got the bigger higher ups at Microsoft to look at that deal and be like, okay, how do we actually maximize all this stuff? And, unless you're really doggedly devoted to the console war stuff or an exclusivity thing, you might as well spread that all out and make all the money in the world. Like the fact that the reality of them making so much money last year did come from the acquisition. Like that is what bolstered their bottom line. So if you don't care about Xbox at all and you're Johnny Microsoft, you might as well just do this.
Yeah, no.
Microsoft.
Again, like it's just for me, like I can understand why that from a Microsoft perspective, they would look at it and go, Microsoft has been this software brand for longer than Xbox has existed. But Microsoft in the gaming space, to me, that does not have that recognition or anything. So I really do think, I know I'm belaboring the point now, but in my head, I'm like, surely they have to see the value of the Xbox name. Like it is still a viable thing. Like the only reason why it's lagged behind, so like you can talk about like how many years were lost with the Xbox One's introduction and stuff. But for me, it's a case of like people will be more excited to play, an Xbox tablet, whatever you want to call it, the Xbox Blade, the Xbox Edge, or something.
Oh my
cool.
God! If you did the Xbox 360 Blade era, if you did the X Blade, maybe that's 2000s, but if you did the Xbox Blade or something, why do that?
Why do I feel like X Blade's already taken?
Maybe it is, but if you did an Xbox Blade where the dashboard is modeled after the 360 blades, maybe that only appeals to
Wesley
people.
Snipes narrates the titles.
Just get back into that era and have a handheld Xbox Blade dashboard. That thing would be sick.
Yeah, no, I think in terms of just looking at things that are the positives to draw from here, the idea of a handheld Xbox is really, really cool. I think it's important that, now that we're getting with these reports, that both Sony and Microsoft are looking at what Nintendo has done so well. And that should probably, cause Nintendo to think, okay, how are we going to up the switch the next time? So it's interesting. I'm curious to see what Microsoft and Sony can pull off with that space, because it's been so long since, the Vita kind of came and went and everything. I know you love it. Everyone's dying for it. But I'm also just kind of like, they look at this now and go, maybe we shouldn't have abandoned this concept for like 10 years or something.
It would have been the wrong time. Like, if the Vita came out now or something like that, it would be more of a Switch competitor or whatever. And the last thing I want to talk about is why all this stuff is happening. And a lot of this does come from The Verge's report by Tom Warren, noting that Game Pass revenue and subscriber numbers for Game Pass are down, as was revealed during the FTC trial last year. But The Verge does highlight a quote in their more recent report from Phil Spencer from 2022. This is before Starfield and Redfall, then didn't hit their release windows or critical expectations, with Spencer saying it feels like we're likely to go through a gap of almost 16 months between big exclusive launches on the platform. And this really is a disaster situation for us, given all that we've invested in content across our studios at our Game Pass content fund. I love the idea of a content fund. But still, The Verge writes that, from a targeted growth percentage of 73%, according to internal documents, Xbox have only achieved 28%. And they've reportedly failed their internal targets for the last 2 years. Now, that is, because of those games not coming out at the right time, or you can argue that. And then you've obviously got the quality argument in regards to Starfield. Redfall was a bit of a disaster, which Spencer was sort of raked over the coals for in the immediate aftermath of that game. And there's the whole conversation around why people subscribe to Game Pass. Did they get multiple months? Did they get a whole year? Did they get it, on a free trial just to try a few games? Like, there's all that stuff. But either way, they haven't hit the targets they set out for themselves to make Game Pass as sustainable as it needs to be, which is why all this stuff is happening. They just need to recoup the money.
It seems as though they have hit the ceiling with this way quicker than all the movie streamers did, which is why over the past few years we've seen, Netflix, Disney Plus increasing their, doing the password sharing crackdown and also raising subscription prices. It's because the money that is in streaming, it's not coming as quickly as it needs to.
Volatile.
So this is interesting because obviously the rumored next Xbox console is an all-digital Series X.
If that one is true, then that's that weird tower
thing. So, maybe they're banking on more people. Maybe they're banking on the idea of if we get more eyes on Xbox games, Xbox branding, we'll have people coming onto Microsoft Game Pass from rival competitors. But at the same time, I do worry for Xbox that there is just a ceiling with this, even though it's immensely popular and very, it's a great deal for gamers. Totally. If you want to jump on Game Pass, you have so many different titles available. But I do wonder the churn rates that we're talking about with streaming services. Are we reaching just kind of a critical mass with all these, and people are looking at it and going, well, maybe I need to cull my Game Pass and just invest in a few games and that'll be me. But even then, I feel like if you only buy a couple of games a year, Game Pass is still a really good deal.
No, it is. I mean, the thing is, at the beginning, when they says, they acquired all these studios, not the Activision acquisition, but the ones before that, when they were getting Double Fine and Undead Labs and whatever else. And the idea was that you would have some sort of head-turning exclusive every sort of 2-3 months. I remember them mentioning a cadence to that stuff that they then didn't stick to. And then when Starfield came out, I forget the name of the dude that was internally at Xbox, but he referred to Starfield as the starting pistol for the generation or their general plan or whatever. And then Starfield hasn't been received that well. I liked it a hell of a lot, but I totally get why people don't.
3 years into the generation as well.
Yeah, someone's finally found the pistol.
We started now. We're here. We're here, guys.
We actually have some things now. But then, it's like if Starfield isn't turning heads and Starfield isn't spiking Game Pass subscriptions, which it did sell consoles. There was a whole thing about it was like a 76% uptick in console sales. If that still hasn't meaningfully translated into long-term Game Pass subs, maybe they're realizing people drop off after a week or two, maybe they didn't stick with Starfield at all, then you do need to do something else. We're talking about billions of dollars invested in a platform that isn't working. So that's ultimately why all this stuff is happening. But still, full clarification's coming on Thursday, but this is all we know for now.